die, but your spouse's name is also on the title, that's an operation of law transfer between the two of you. So that's good. But there can be a challenge. There could be an issue later when the second to die passes away, and then how is it distributed then? Is it an operation of law transfer then? If it's in trust and is done right, then it'll be an operation of law transfer, quick and easy, and it'll be good. If there's some tough interpersonal family things or whatever, it can be contested more easily if you use a will or don't have a will, because the probate process can be pretty ugly. Will pretty much equals probate, and not having a will equals probate, and that's kind of where we are on the handout there of whether it's testate or intestate distribution. You're in probate, and probate can be fine, but it's kind of a probate is in some cases can be an opportunity. It's published in the paper, and basically the ad in the paper says anybody that wants to, so and so died, so roll up your sleeves and see what you can come carry away. So people show up with their sleeves rolled up, and the door is open for them to get in. But if you transfer it with an operation of law transfer, it doesn't matter how many people are out on the street with their sleeves rolled up, the door's closed. So it's a safer transfer. So I recommend it for that reason. Okay, so I think I covered that issue of the spouse thing. And if I didn't, please tell me if I should cover it better. I'm going to have an individual question and answer time after lunch up in the Spanish room, I understand, is where it is. You probably know where that is. I don't, so maybe you can show me. But I'd be happy if you have specific questions, I'd be happy to talk to you more then. Okay, so we are talking about what it was like to be raised in Arkansas on a river. Yes, I read Huck Finn. Yes, I built a raft. Yes, I tried to float it to the Mississippi. I did not get there. My raft didn't float good enough. So, some of you have built better rafts and things that I learned. Speaking of this gentleman asked me where I'm going to stay next time I come because I keep telling stories on Scott. I have new information about that. He forgot, he told me, he confessed during the break that he forgot to get out the fresh blueberries for us to put in our cereal this morning. You know, it just makes me sad thinking about what I could have eaten. So we really might be looking for a place to stay. Scott can probably build a better raft than me. He can also build a better rabbit snare than me. He showed me his design last night. And I'm anxious to try it. My 14-year-old son, I'm sure, would love that. And so we're going to try that out. There was a young couple that went to an attorney and paid $285 to have a will drawn up so that their 4 children would be provided for equally at the time of their death. And they went home feeling really good about it. And then somebody said, hey, you really need life insurance to care for those kids. So they went out, saw their agent, got $500,000 of life insurance. They passed away in a car accident, and the provision in the will said the kids don't get the assets until they're 25. Good provision. It's a good provision, really, honestly, because then the kids have to work. Hey, what is that? It's like a 4-letter word. You don't want to say that around here, right? Or anywhere, if there's a teenager around sometimes. Kids need to work. Kids need to know the value of hard work. Can you picture me at 4 years old carrying the wood stakes that are dragging the ground because they're so long, and I got the sledgehammer, and I'm doing my best to keep up with my dad. That was good for me. That was good for me. But what happened when they died, because it was an operation of law transfer with the life insurance, guess how old you need to be in all 50 states to receive a life insurance payout? 18. So what did they do when they turned 18? Boom, all this money. So what are they driving? Fast sports car. How long do they have it? Not very long. How much trouble do they get into? A lot. So using a trust or even a will, the will can create a trust to delay distribution, if that's how you do it. Or you can have a trust that delays distribution. But distributing in pieces is a good idea, in my opinion. to say at 18 you get some, at 30 you get some, and at 35 you get some. And if you blew the first wad, hopefully you'll be a little smarter the second time, and by the third time, hopefully you'll be smart enough to invest it and live off what it makes instead of living off the principal, right? This is a whole other issue. The Israelite people were not to sell the principal. The principal was the land. And the principal produced interest, which was the crops from the land and all that. And so some have suggested that there are some smart people who've learned from that who never spend the principal, and they always only use the interest. And I think that's a good principle. It's a good principle. So if you get a big inheritance, please do me a favor, invest it conservatively and wisely, and don't spend the principal. Just don't. Just don't. Now, did they get ripped off? Did those parents get ripped off? Is that a rip-off by the legal profession? No, they didn't understand the priority of transfers. The operation of law transfer with the life insurance trumped the testate, number 3, the will, and it was simply because they didn't understand it, and they didn't coordinate what they owned with the documents they had in place for distribution. So what you own needs to be coordinated so that when you die, it happens how you think it's going to happen. Because if you don't have them coordinated, then it doesn't happen how you want it to happen. So it's important that you keep them coordinated. I can take you to a courthouse 200 years ago in Virginia. A man filed a will there, and he said, I can leave my children with a relationship with Jesus Christ and none of the world's goods, and they are of all children most wealthy, or I can leave them with all the world's goods and without a relationship with Christ, and they are of all children most miserable. He's known better for another saying that he had, which was, give me liberty or give me death. Now, how can we read that document? It's part of the public record. That's how. Because wills are always part of the public record. They become part of the public record during the probate process. Now, what did his... did I say the name right? Was it Matthew Henry? I think it was Matthew Henry. Patrick Henry, yeah. Matthew Henry. You can tell I'm going to go be a preacher. He wrote some commentaries. But we don't know what his trust said. Why? Because the trust is private. That's a good thing about trust, is nobody knows what's in them except the people that receive the assets from them. So for the sake of privacy, sometimes that's a really good thing. Let's switch modes to get over here. Please don't die without a will. Please don't do that. It's not good, because then the state is deciding what happens. Please at least have a will. And why should you have a will? Because it's a good Christian testimony. You can say in there, I'm giving you what I'm giving you because I love you and because Christ died for me. You can actually write your testimony into your will. You revoke a previous will. There's various things that can happen in there. Somebody mentioned about establishing a trust inside a will. That can be done. But then what you're doing is you're building a level 3 transfer inside the level 2 transfer, operation of law, inside the will. So it's still not quite as strong. Hey, I'm going to draw more pictures because this is fun to use, and pictures are pretty good. We talked about this before. If you have a will that is the centerpiece of your distribution, then yeah, you're asking people to come contest it. If you have a revocable living trust, because it's a higher transfer, then it's safer from those challenges, and that's something smart to keep in mind. Now, when you're creating a will or a trust, always distribute on a percentage basis. Don't say $1,000 to Sam and the house to Judy. Say 10% of my assets to this person and 30% here, because in Fort Myers, Florida, a few years ago, there was a gentleman who owned 3 pieces of property, and he wanted to leave $1 million to a Bible college. Well, over the course of time, he sold one of the pieces of property. One of the pieces of property got condemned. His plan was to leave 1 piece of real estate to each of his 3 sons. But what did he do? Life gets in the way. He winds up selling one gets condemned, and one is worth $20 million because it's a prime real estate area. Well, what happened when he died? Well, the one remaining piece of property that had value had to be sold to pay the estate tax, and it jeopardized the gift to the college. I think maybe it wasn't $20 million. However it worked out, the college didn't get the gift because the property had to be sold to make the gift, and then nobody got anything. So if you did it by percentage, it's just a much better way to do it. So I recommend that you think in terms of percentages. We were talking about the validity of wills, and can you create your own? And the answer is yes, you're an American. You can represent yourself in court. You can create your own legal documents. You have the right to do that. But do you have the confidence to do that and make sure it's done really right? For that reason, I kind of suggest caution in that area. If there are software packages that will help you do these things, and if you're really sharp with it and you really follow all the instructions, I think you're probably okay. But please do be careful with that. Now, how should you choose a personal representative for your trust or will? Well, number one is availability. If you pick someone that lives in another state, they're going to have to fly in to be part of resolving things. And that's sometimes a challenge. So sometimes closer by is good. Are they qualified? That's a good thing to consider. If you pick one of your children, and a lot of times people pick their oldest child to be their personal representative, sometimes that can create conflict in the family. And you might say, my kids would never do that. Here's what I suggest. Talk to your pastor about that. Because these are spiritual decisions, right? We established at the beginning that we're stewards, we're not owners. And if the Lord cares about your kids as much or more than you do, and so you may want to consider a possible option of not doing that. You could use a bank or a trust company because they don't get drunk, they don't move away, they're bonded, but sometimes they're expensive, so that's a challenge. But you can have it set up in some situations where your family can veto what the trust department of the bank does, and that's sometimes the best arrangement. But every situation is different, but maybe a good friend that is smart in business, that is not a beneficiary, could be a good choice, that's not in the family. So not in the family, not a beneficiary, that can also be a good choice. How to choose a guardian for minor children. And we're going to blow past this, but I'm just going to say this. Having them move to another state just to be with family can be traumatic for the kids. So you may want to just pick somebody across the aisle from you here in the assembly and say, hey, we'd be honored to have you raise our children if we die, and could we do the same for you? And then the kids' life is basically, there's a lot of continuity. They're still going to the same school. They still have the same friends, and it's less emotionally traumatic for them. And you know the spiritual values of the people that you're talking to, and that's the most important thing, that they're going to be raised to love the Lord. So, but maybe talk to your pastor about that one too. This is just one of the greatest things you can do. If my 14-year-old son right now received $1 million, I promise he would buy a Camaro today. So please consider using trusts to postpone distribution to those minor children. We talked about some ages. Maybe starting at 25 could be good. Provide equal distribution. You know, if you have a 3-year-old son and a 17-year-old son, and you die today, you've bought a lot more basketball shoes. Aren't they expensive for that 17-year-old son than you did for the 3-year-old? So you may want to provide a little extra for the younger one because there's more basketball shoes to buy. My son wants some very expensive basketball shoes, in case you didn't figure that out. And Dad said no. And if you place the property under third-party control, sometimes it's better if it's not a family member. Because here's what happens. The kid thinks it's my money. So my son's 14, and I die. I have a $500,000 life insurance policy. My son will think tomorrow, hey, if my brother, let's say, for example, is this getting confusing? I die, I leave my property in the control of my brother for the benefit of my son. But now my son looks at his uncle as the enemy that's standing between him and what's his. That's my money that you're standing. What do you mean I can't borrow some of that money even though I'm only 14 to buy the Camaro? It's my money. And so we're forsaking the scriptural principle of never putting property above people. If you're thinking spiritually, you're thinking, I don't want to jeopardize their relationship. I want him to be able to do what I would do and put my arm around the boy and say, I love you, son. Go mow some more lawns. But they can't do that if my son is perceiving his uncle as the enemy that's keeping him from what's rightfully his. So you may want to use a third party, a good friend in the church that is good with business things, and that way they can just both kind of shrug together and get to work. Incompetency provisions definitely should be made there. Okay, let's talk about some other documents. Durable power of attorney for property. If you get in a car accident today and are in a coma for a year, who's going to pay your taxes? If you don't have a durable power of attorney for property, then you may have then there may be a judge may have to decide who does that for you. Why let a judge do that? Why don't you make that decision? You're the steward of what God has entrusted to you, so step up and have that in place just in case. And I recommend that not be a family member, ideally, for the same reason. Sometimes people, again, maybe talk to your pastor about this or pray about it. Sometimes a family member could be fine, but sometimes that can be a challenging thing for them. People have told me, if you hate somebody, make them your personal representative, because they're going to hate you before it's all done. Not really, but it's a lot of burden to put on somebody. And for example, if you die and your sister, let's say, has the property management, she's already grieving that you died. So she's already experiencing a pretty heavy burden. So then to ask her to do something that's not in her comfort zone on top of it can be a challenge. It can be fine. I'm not saying don't do it, but I guess I'm just saying consider what effect it will have on them. Healthcare decisions, do pick a family member for a durable power of attorney for healthcare decisions. And if you think, oh, these are just extra documents, man, I don't have time for this. I got 2 words for you. Terry Shivo. How old was she? 27? You might think, I'm young, I'm healthy, I don't need this stuff. That could be. But as good stewards, I think it's smart to have these things in place. Now, I promised we're going to talk about a letter of instructions. I suggest you go home today and write a love letter to your kids. It's your letter of instructions. And in that letter, you can say where you want to be buried, what songs you want sung at your funeral. You can say, you can make it multiple pages long a letter to each kid that says, I love you, and I want you to have Grandma's diamond ring, and make it in your own handwriting. I want you to have the grand piano that came from, that's been in the family for 4 generations. And then to the next kid, I want you to have Grandpa's shotgun. But make it a love letter to them and say, I'm giving this to you, not because I have to, but because I love you, and every time you see this, I want you to be reminded of God's love for you, and you can share the gospel with them if they're not saved. I can tell you this. A week after you die, they are not going to be sitting on the porch swing holding the legal documents and crying and thinking about, emotional thoughts about you. They're going to be holding that letter that you gave them, and that's going to have an impact on their life at a time when they really need it. What words would you want them to read a week after you're gone? Sit down and put some time into that, some thought into that, and write it in your own handwriting. It's not a legally binding document, to my understanding, so it doesn't need to be coordinated with the will or trust if it mentions the shotgun, the diamond ring, and the grand piano. So make sure it's coordinated. Trying to coordinate all these documents to make sure they all work together. But you can have an impact on them. You know Art Orheim with Awana. Some of you may come to the Grace Conference. Maybe you've met him. 90-something years old. He made a video to be played at his funeral. What a great idea. The guy is so evangelistic. He witnesses to every creature he comes in contact with. He's just phenomenal. Yes?
I just want to make a point that for your healthcare decisions, it is very important that you let your children that are of age to understand what you put in writing, because when you go to the hospital, you may have this document, but there are family members who are against your wishes. They supersede your document. So you need to really make it clear to your family about many of these decisions, because they ultimately, at a time of crisis, can override what you've done for the state of themselves.
Okay, great advice. Sure. Some wise advice is to make sure your children understand what your healthcare desires are, because ultimately they're going to be making the decisions for you, not the document you created to preserve your wishes.
So that frees them up.
Right.
That's what we found. We brought the document, we answered all the questions, but they did tell us that if any family member was against that, there would be problems.
Okay, good. And that could be a good reason, too, to not use the state forms, but to create a custom one that's legally binding, but really spell out your wishes in detail. And maybe different scenarios. If this happens, this is what I want. If this happens, this is what I want. And put spiritual values in there so they really understand where you're coming from and why, and that you really hold to it. Because otherwise, they might be able to look at it and say, oh, Mom didn't really understand what was on that form. She was just signing forms. There was just another form in the stack, and she signed it, but this is what she really wants. You know? So, good idea to inform your kids. So, the letter of instructions. What do you want your... Art Orheim, the video. He's going to be winning souls after he's gone. What a great opportunity. You can impact your kids spiritually after you're gone with that letter of instructions. And you can also prevent 80% of the conflicts that happen in estates over the household goods and personal effects that people are fighting over, because you included those in there and specifically told each kid why they got what they got. And if they don't like it, the personal representative can hold up that letter and say, well, they said right here in their handwriting what they wanted to have happen. And it may not be legally binding, but I'll tell you what. If my mom or dad took the time to write something in their own hand, I wouldn't be arguing with it. So you're helping your personal representative. You're going to bat for them by putting it in your own handwriting right there. And you're providing the bucket full of water to put out the potential fire that might happen down the road. And your personal representative will thank you for your foresight. So let's look at a chart. We can coordinate all these things together, because we've been talking about quite a few different documents and how do they all work together. Well, basic estate design. You see in the middle there, your will appoints your personal representative. Your durable power of attorney for property manages your assets here off to the right, right here, during your lifetime. And household goods and personal effects, you see how we coordinated that through with the letter of instructions down to the family. Your different assets up here are all funneled down through the will if they are owned in your name. The will can establish a trust for the minor children and delay distribution until the children are a little bit older. And then the trust, there's different types of trust. We're going to talk about some of those, and those are really fun to talk about because they're powerful. That trust can pay out to charity after the children are done with it. Now, going to the next slide, the same thing happens, only the trust here is in the middle. And when we say trust here in this situation, we're talking about a revocable living trust. You can change it anytime you want to, but if your death does occur, it's an operation of law transfer, so it goes quickly and efficiently to the people you want it to go to with a minimum of delay and problems. So a trust can do everything that a will can do, only it does it better and faster. It is more expensive. That was a question somebody asked me. In Chicago, it's quite a bit more expensive. Up here, I'm sure it's probably 4 or 5 times what it costs to get a will done. But is it worth it? You have to make that decision for yourself. But your will, if your trust is the centerpiece, then you still have a will. The will just says anything that I own in my name at the time of my death goes over into the trust, and the trust does all the distribution. That's good because it coordinates all the distribution into an operation of law transfer, and that's a smart thing to do. I got off track with my bucket story before. I was talking about the bucket with the goats. What you can do, if you go home to your house right now and take everything that you own, all the papers, all the titles, everything that you own, and put it on your coffee table, you'll notice up at the top that your name is up there, maybe you, your spouse. And by the way, somebody asked about their house being just in their husband's name. It's, again, I'm not an attorney, but my suggestion is make sure both of your names are on it. Because I've seen situations where that did cause a problem. The spouse really didn't have the rights that they should have had because of an oversight like that. So that's just an aside. But the bucket, this is basically a bucket that you can take all those papers off your coffee table and put all the papers into the bucket of the Revocable Living Trust. And at your death, the bucket becomes a funnel that does the distribution right here, makes it happen exactly how you want it to happen by a successor trustee that you trust. And it happens quickly and efficiently, and it's just the best way to do it, the best way possible. So these are the documents you use. Your letter of instructions over here. You got your trust up here. Your will that points to the trust. Your durable powers of attorney that refer to the trust. And pretty much everything that you own can be coordinated this way. Now, there's an exception to this, and that's your IRA that's going to pass outside of this process by beneficiary designation, which is an operation of law transfer. So what are some advantages of the Revocable Living Trust? Well, the certainty of it. It's safer. It's simpler. It's simpler to do, and it's easier to do. It requires less Advil for the people that are left behind, and they will thank you for doing it. I hear happy stories from people who come up to me after a seminar like this and say, thank you for recommending people use a trust like that because it sure made our life a lot easier. And conversely, people a lot of times come up and say, we went through a probate process that has been terrible. I talked to a guy recently whose grandmother wants to move into an assisted living home, but she can't because the house that she lives in is tied up in probate and has been for the last 11 years because one of the grandchildren is contesting the provision of the will, and they want more. And you know what's going to happen? That grandchild is probably going to get what they want or deplete the estate trying, So again, a good idea to use and I say these as scary stories, and I guess I'm not trying to scare you. But I guess just to caution you that operation of law is better than a will if you have significant estate value or if you anticipate there might be some conflict down the road. There are some other very good reasons that we'll skip by. Basic estate tax rules. There's an unlimited marital deduction. Estate tax, again, this year is not really a big thing because it's at $3.5 million per individual. Next year it's repealed. In 2011 it comes back at $1 million and 55%. It's pretty high. But it probably is not going to affect most of us in this room, so we will keep going. The good news is estate taxes are optional. You can pay the tax, you can postpone the tax, or you can avoid the tax altogether. And that's true for a number of things, and that's exciting. That's the bar chart that we showed before where you can give more to your family and more to your church by giving less to the government. You might think, well, Neal, what does this have to do with me? If you have an IRA, it has a lot to do with you, and we're going to find that out here. I think we're going to kind of skip past this one too because estate tax is just not an issue for most of us. But this is an issue. You may want to consider, as you set up your Revocable Living Trust, setting up what they call an AB provision. And I think somebody was sharing with me during the break that their parents had done this, and it was wonderful because it protects your estate tax credit out in the future. Basically, each person has one estate tax credit. So let's say there's a husband and wife. They each have one. This is a way for you to preserve both of them for the value of your estate. I expect taxes to go up. We are spending money like crazy in this country. We are mortgaging our kids' futures, and I'm just thankful that they know the Lord and I know the Lord and we can trust Him, because I'm telling you, it's pretty scary. You want to try to protect the credit that you have. Whatever they give you, try to protect it. This is a way you can protect it, because otherwise what happens is, if one person dies without protecting it, then the entire estate has to go through the one person's tax credit. And it may not, if the ceiling comes down to, let's say, $500,000, then a lot of people in this room may be paying estate tax because you didn't preserve $500,000 for each of you, as far as being able to pass that on without an estate tax in the future. So an A-B trust is a smart tool to use for that. The parable of the apple orchard. Well, in the beginning, God created the apple tree, and He said to man, "This is my tree, and I'm going to show you how to prune it. I'm going to show you how to fertilize it, and I'm going to send sunshine and rain and my blessing, and together we're going to grow beautiful apples." And when you take a bite of that first apple, you're going to say, "My, that is a delicious apple." And in the middle of the apple, you're going to find some seeds. And I'm going to show you how to plant those seeds, and you can grow an entire orchard. So man did it. And then he and man and woman had children. They trained their children how to plant seeds, and pretty soon the whole country had apple orchards and happy people eating apples. But people started to argue about who was going to pick the apples. And then the neighboring countries that didn't have apples started to get armies together to come take over the apple orchard so they could eat apples. So man went to God, and God said, "This isn't good, we're going to fix this." So He sent judges and kings, and the judges decided who was going to pick the apples, and the kings created armies to protect the orchards. And everything was good for a while until judges and kings came back and said, "Hey, we need some of your money to finance our operation." And so every time man went in the apple orchard, he picked 100 bushel of apples and started to give, he had to give 30 bushels to the judges and kings for protecting him and doing different jobs they did. We call that income tax, and that was okay. Because he had 70 bushels of apples, he and his family could still eat. Things were okay. But then there got to be a point where he decided that business was so good, things were going so well, he was going to sell his apple orchard and buy a packing business and sell it to the neighbors down the way that didn't have any apples. And that went great until he actually did it, and the government came in and cut down a quarter of his apple trees. We call that capital gains tax. Now the problem is now he goes out in the orchard and he doesn't get 100 bushel of apples anymore because a quarter of the trees are gone. So capital gains tax, he discovered, was not a very good thing. He looked over and saw his neighbor, and his neighbor, when he died, Caesar came in and cut down half of his trees. And so he said, "That's just not a good thing." We call that estate tax. And now I think Caesar has gotten carried away and is deciding to mortgage everyone's orchards and basically make all the orchards worth nothing, I think, is pretty much what's happening these days. But here's the basic problem. The basic solution to the problem. Man has an opportunity to build a fence around the orchard and say, "Caesar, this is God's orchard, and I'm going to protect it from you because you've got a big chainsaw and you're cutting down trees, and that's not going to happen anymore. And this fence is going to keep you out. You can stand at the gate and you can beg for all the apples you think you can justify taking, but you're not cutting down any more trees. And there is a way that you can build a fence around the assets and that God has given you, because those taxes on your IRA, estate taxes, gift taxes, those are all optional taxes. You can pay the taxes, you can postpone them, or you can avoid them altogether. And we're going to talk about how to do that, because this is just some important, some really neat stuff. And instead of looking at the charts here, I'm going to draw some pictures, because think it'll illustrate it better. You can, during your life or at your death, take assets and put them behind this barbed wire fence. The barbed wire fence protects the apples in the orchard that God has entrusted to your care. This is not a revocable living trust. This is typically either a charitable lead trust or a charitable remainder trust. What you can do, for example, is let's say you have $100,000 and you put that into the trust. That will give you back income for life, so you get money back from that situation. You're not losing control over this. That's an important thing for you to keep in mind. You are protecting it because this fence protects it from many things. It protects it from taxes, whether it's capital gains tax or estate tax. It protects it from depletion from, let's say you transfer this $100,000 to your children and there's a divorce, there's depletion that happens there. If I transfer that $100,000 to my son, Camaro, right? So you put it here, and it can either pay income to you or to your beneficiaries until the interest earned equals the original corpus. So the principal of $100,000 here, over time, because money has a time value, 100% of that can come back to you here, or your children here. And it's in a situation where Caesar has not cut down any trees. You've got 100% of the principal making money for you instead of 75% of it or 50% of it. So you're making money on 100%, which is just smart. You get 100% of it back over time. And at the end of the trust period, the principal that's still there can go to the charity or charities of your choice. And that's a good thing. You preserved 100% of it. You've gotten 100% of it back. Now, I acknowledge that Caesar is here at the gate trying to justify the apples that he can take. Income tax, he will get income tax off that, but here's the advantage of it. And let's pretend in this situation that this is your IRA. And you, at your death, make a charitable remainder trust. I understand this can be done. You'll want to check with your attorney on this, but this is what I understand can be done. Make a charitable remainder trust the beneficiary of your IRA instead of a personal beneficiary. Instead of saying, my son gets the balance of my IRA if there's anything left, especially after the market lately, right? It's probably half of what it was. But instead of having a personal beneficiary, because if you do that, Caesar's going to come in and cut down a bunch of those trees. It's called tax in respect of a decedent, or income in respect of a decedent. They're going to whack off probably a good 35%, 40% of your IRA if you have a personal beneficiary for it. That makes IRAs a wonderful tool to give directly to charity if you don't want to mess with a trust. If you're going to do charitable giving at your death, one of the first things you want to look for to give is your IRA, whatever the balance is left there. If you're going to do charitable giving, why is that? Because you're maximizing your giving power. If you give it to anything other than a charity or a trust like this arrangement, they're going to be paying significant taxes on it, which are going to reduce what they're actually receiving. But if you do it this way, let's say it's an IRA, instead of your kids doing it this way, giving it directly to them, they'd only get 60%, let's say, right? You do it this way, you put it over here behind the fence, and it's safe from the government, and safe from depletion from your children, safe from divorce of your children. It's just safe behind that fence. You and or your children can get 100% of that, of the $100,000, and then it goes to charity. So what have you done? You've given it twice. That's good stewardship. That's smart. Instead of only giving 60% of it once, you gave 200% of it. Sounds to me like you were paying attention in the first part of this class. You understood that God owns it all, and you're going to be smart. Reminds me of a parable I heard one time. Wasn't there a parable about some guys that got some talents, and who were the guys that were commended? Those who doubled what they got, right? This is a way you can do that, and I recommend that you consider the power of a trust like this. So, There is, let's see, what else can we cover here today that will be good? I'll tell you what we're going to do now. We're going to go ahead and switch gears. Could I get a couple more volunteers? Thank you very much. Can you make sure everybody gets one of those? How a charitable trust makes taxes optional. We already talked about God being the owner of all. There's another principle that there's really no value of ownership to an individual. You can own something, but if you can't use it, even if you own it, if you can't use it, there's no value to you of that ownership. So the real ownership is in being able to use it. Sometimes we use things that we don't really specifically directly own. I use the public park, but I don't really own it myself. So use is really the power. Given enough time, the use of property will exceed the original value. That's an important principle to remember. The rule of 72 says $1 invested at 1% will equal $2 in 72 years. So the rule of 72 is kind of a good way to picture the time value of money. In 10 years, $1 at 7.2% will equal $2. So when we're looking at like the trust over there and the time value of money, that's a good way to understand that. Let's keep going with this because I want to leave a little time for a couple other things and maybe some questions in the end. When we look at a trust, there's always a grantor, there's always a corpus, a trust, there's terms and a contract. And how do we see that in relation to stewardship? Well, God is the grantor. He's given us time, talent, and treasure. You are His trustee, and He's given you terms in His Word for how to be a good steward. Gift tax, capital gains tax rules. If you own it for less than a year, you're going to be paying tax at ordinary income tax rates. If you own it for longer than that, you'll be paying paying tax on the difference between the cost basis and the fair market value. Again, we're going really fast here. If you sell an asset without a trust, in this example, you have a $100,000 asset, you will have a considerable tax on that asset because you didn't use a trust. If instead, though, you realize that those taxes are avoidable, you can either avoid it by dying, and I don't see any hands raised to volunteer to do this way. You can use a specially designed charitable trust. And we drew a picture of that just a moment ago, but here's, again, an example of how that works. You put your property behind that fence over into the charitable trust, and it provides income to you for life, and you get your original principal out of it. And you aren't losing control of it because it's over 100% over there is working for you. If you sell your $100,000 asset and pay $17,000 of taxes, you don't have the original principal to work with. If you do it this way, you have all 100 apple trees producing apples for you, and you're getting more apples that way. And then at the end, a charitable organization or organizations that you choose can receive it. And by the way, you can change who that is that receives it. If you set up a trust and for some reason you're not happy with the organization, you can change that, and it's not too hard to do without. You're not locked into it. It's not set in stone as long as it's a public charity that qualifies, which a church would qualify. And, of course, you get the tax deduction from doing that as well. And the tax savings, you can save it, or you can spend it, or you can give it away there with those tax savings. I promised that we are going to fly, and we are going to just fly down through the next several pages. 12:15, 12:30, okay. Okay, great. Yeah, but that cuts into lunch. I thank you. We might do that. Best time of the day is lunch if it's the next meal. Best time of the day is dinner if it's the next meal. And I already told them about the blueberries. You weren't in the room, but so I really am going to be having to look for another place to stay. They have been such gracious hosts. They have been so much fun, and our one time. This is the second time we've been there, the first and last. At the rate I'm going, it's because of me ruining their gracious hospitality. You can, keep going here. You are in control of how this works when you set up a charitable trust. You're choosing the trustee. Trustee can be yourself. It can be a trusted friend or advisor, a bank or trust organization or company. Charities can sometimes serve in that role, but the point is you're in control of that. You're choosing the income that you receive, the next page. You are choosing the length of the trust. So you're in control of this. You choose the amount of the charitable deduction. You choose the charitable organization that receives it. So there's a perception that if you set up an irrevocable trust, which it is, we've talked about revocable trusts before. Now, this is an irrevocable trust. But you are not losing control, because look at all the control you had. You chose who was the trustee, you chose the payout, you chose how long it lasted, and you're choosing where it goes, and you're receiving income from it and a charitable tax deduction. And you can save money this way with your IRA for your children's sake, not for you, because you can't do this with your IRA while you're alive, but you could use it to transfer it to them, and then give it twice, both to your children and to charity. And I think we're going to skip through a lot of this here too. I guess I really want you to get the idea that you can give more to your family and more to charity by giving less to the government by using a specially designed charitable trust. And avoiding the tax, I think, is always the smartest way to go with that. Yeah, we've seen that already. You choose the amount of taxes that are saved by the length of the trust and the payout rate from it. You're in control. You're in control of that also. I'm sorry for all the page turning here, guys. This is an interesting page. The generation that we're living in now really does want instant gratification, and I have to kind of admit that includes me. If I can microwave something rather than put it in the oven, I will. But my parents don't own a microwave. They don't mind something taking a while. They are used to things taking a while, and they don't mind gratification being delayed. If they received an inheritance, I really doubt that they would probably spend any of it. But people in my generation or younger, they have no problem spending money. So there's a difference there that it'd be smart for us to be aware of. The previous generation considered divorce to be, not something that you did. Today, it's over 50%. So what happens when you're transferring assets? If you leave your inheritance if you leave $100,000 to your son, and his wife divorces him next year, where did half of your inheritance go? All right, and it happens quite a bit. If you use a trust like we talked about before, then here you are, you transfer that $100,000 into the trust, you put that fence around it, that $100,000 gets, 100% of that gets paid to your son with all the things that you set up that you had control of. You're the trustee, you choose who the trustee is, you choose the amount of time involved, you choose the payout rate, you choose all that, and then when he gets divorced, what happens? He's safe. He's fine. He doesn't control that stream of income coming to him, and it's not part of the settlement. So you've protected it from divorce and from attrition that way, and that was good stewardship. That was a good move. We live in an increasingly litigious society. You transfer your $100,000 to your son, and he gets sued. Then what happens? But same thing over here. If you set it up through the trust, you have made it safe, and that's a good thing. It was a good move. So the estate design, we've kind of already seen this before. The general idea that we can give more to your family, give more to your church, and the government gets less. And this is perfectly legal. It's been challenged a number of times, but Congress has upheld it every single time since 1969. And what happens with that? Basically, my understanding is that in law, if you set up a trust today, according to the laws that are in effect today, and the rules change tomorrow, you did it today, so you're okay. Your trust is going to do what you designed it to do. The laws don't work backwards, from what I understand in this area. So that's a good reason to use what you have. Use these tools while we have them, because it seems like God has given this to us, and as stewards, we can utilize this tool that a lot of people do use, but maybe we're just maybe not aware of how to use it, and so hopefully today we can become more aware. We talked about income in respect of a decedent. Your IRA will be taxed pretty heavily if you give it directly to a personal beneficiary. It makes it a good tool, like we said, for either giving directly to charity or to funnel it through a specially designed trust to protect it. That way your kids still get it, and charity gets it too, and so that really is a win-win. We are going to, I think we're going to go ahead and skip through the rest of that one, and in the next amount of time that we have, let me go ahead and pass out a couple more items. Thank you, guys. You're getting your exercise for today. Let's give everybody one of each of these, one of each of those. Yep. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an opportunity to fill out an inventory, kind of take inventory of your own situation, and it'll give you an idea of what you have and what you could do with it. There's kind of two parts. You're getting a guide, and you're getting a sheet that you can fill out that has it's a personal inventory form, and it'll kind of give you an idea of where you are. Now, these are not legal documents, but they are powerful tools for figuring out what you have and the people that are in your life and what you want to leave for them. And again, I recommend doing that by percentage. Can I grab one of those from you? Thank you. So what we'll do is we'll take the confidential estate inventory, the one without the clear sleeve, and we'll just go through that. Quickly, you can just kind of fill this out for yourself to kind of have an idea of what your assets are and how you're leaving those. First page talks about the 4 P's, the people, the property, the plans, and the planners. So the first section is about people. Our cost for doing this is, for a typical person, is between $50 and $100 to, if you wanted to give this back to me and have me create a custom estate design for you. And as I'm happy to offer that to you just at what it costs us to do. Now, if you have some incredibly high net worth, my cost is based on the net worth of the design. So it may be up to maybe $200. But what I'm suggesting is whether you choose to give this back to me and have me create a design for you like I held up there before to kind of give you a good idea of where to go from here. Whether you choose to give it back to me or not is up to you. And you already heard I'm going to be a pastor somewhere. In Ohio, I'm going to be pretty busy anyway. So I don't make any money for doing this, but I'm happy to offer it to you to have if you want to have it. And I'm happy to take the time to make sure you get a good design to figure out where to kind of go from here. But if you don't do that, that's totally fine. This is a powerful tool for you too, just in your own growth to fill out and figure out kind of some of the different things involved. So with that in mind, I would suggest that you, maybe not right now, but maybe you take the time to fill this out. And if you want to give it back to me, like I said, I'm happy to offer that to you at our cost. Or if you want to just read it and have it be a good tool for your own development, then that's fine too. And the two papers you just got kind of go together. The one you fill out, the other one kind of explains some of the reasons. It's a little bit deeper, and so that can maybe hopefully be a blessing to you. So let's say, are there any questions so far? Or can I draw some pictures or tell some Arkansas hill stories? Because I love doing that. Yes?
Do you suggest that as a couple, each individual puts one of these together?
Typically. Sure. There was a question about the confidential estate inventory. Do you recommend that each couple fill one out? Right. Okay, sure. It really depends on the situation. And I guess I should repeat the question. Should each, let's say for a husband and wife, should they each fill one out? And the answer is it depends on the complexity of the estate. Maybe in a typical situation, it's probably fine for you to both fill one out together. But in the end, you may wind up with your own will. Each of you may have your own will and your own revocable living trust. Depends, again, on the complexity of the situation. But your attorney could probably give you better advice on that. Yes? Sure. And the question is, if a couple fills it out together and it appears to be a little more complicated, would I let him know? And the answer is yes. I've had the privilege of doing this for the last 5 or 6 years, and it's been a blessing to see people feel good about an area they know they've been neglecting. And so it's kind of like doing your taxes. It really doesn't feel fun. If you guys are like me, right about this point in today's seminar, you're thinking, you're starting to feel like you're at the dentist office. It's kind of to the part that you don't really like. And to be honest with you, I'm not real fond of it either. But I mean, if I were in your situation, but it's a good feeling when you're done. You know how good it feels whenever you get the taxes done and you take them out to the mailbox or take them to the post office if you're like you don't want to make sure the post office, he stamps it or whatever. It just feels good to put the flag up on the box and walk away. You feel lighter and you feel good because you did something important. A check mark. Whew. And if you're like me, I'll do anything for a check mark. But that's why I even put eat lunch as a to-do list, because then it's like, I did something today, To me, all check marks were created equal. If I can, just doing that just makes me feel good. Any other questions? Julie is teaching, or will be teaching here this afternoon at 1:15. She is She's terrific. She's very passionate about writing, and I think some of you are sticking around for that. I think you're going to love that. Julie and I have been married 16 years, and I think I've learned a lot during those 16 years. How many of you guys have learned more being married than you knew when you were single? Yeah. I'm still trying. I had this goal of getting like a doctor's degree in Julie. Like, I want to understand Julie and be able to be a godly husband. And I think I'm still working on my associate's degree after 16 years. But she's great. I think she's a terrific blessing. But I hope you're going to stick around for that. My brother is a land surveyor like my dad, and I was going to become a land surveyor too in Arkansas. But God called me to go to Bible college and have had the privilege of working with Victory and Grace in their media outreach and various things. Pastor Jim, Dr. Scudder's son, and I had the privilege of working with Dr. Scudder's son to start the television outreach there at Quentin Road, which has been a lot of fun. And then I was able to oversee some of that for a little while and then do what I'm doing now. But I'm so honored to be called to be a pastor. Okay, can I ask you to pray for us as we're going to do this? Because I'm a little scared too. Being a pastor is, I don't think you'd want to do it unless you were called to do it, and I really think God is calling us to go do this. And I can't wait to be in His Word a little more and sharing it with people, but I know there's some bumps on the road. I've seen some pastors really hurt. So, if God wants us to be hurt, that's okay, because His grace will be enough for that too, but I'd appreciate your prayers as we're going to do that. It's a new thing for us. Julie has been, has lived in Illinois there, working at Victory and Grace, Quentin Road, for a long time. I mean, most of her life. Her dad started the church, so she was in diapers when they came to Chicago. And so she's been there, so we're taking our two teenage, Amanda's 12. Does that make her a teenager? Yeah. She might be going on 30, though. I don't know, so. But we're going to homeschool them, and they've never been homeschooled. That's the only school they've known is the school there at the church, and they got a lot of friends there. So if I said I didn't have a little trepidation about the situation, I'd be lying to you. So, but I know that God is faithful, and I know we can trust Him. And again, back to the stewardship issue, I feel like this is what God wants us to do, and while I don't fully understand it, I'm trying to do my best to say, yes, sir, this is your planet, and I'm yours, and you want me to go there? Okay, I'll do it. So I'd be grateful if you do that. Anybody in here has anybody in here ever milked a goat? You have. Anybody else? Okay. Did you own the goats? Okay. What kind? Yeah. Oh, great. Yeah. Okay. And if you have goats, you always wind up, it seems like, trying different breeds just to see. And we always had Nubians too because their milk was richer. But that green bus that we had a porch on the back, and my parents, believe it or not, actually sometimes had a goat on the back porch of the bus because we were young and they wanted fresh milk for us, and you didn't have to stop at the store and buy pasteurized, homogenized milk. If you had fresh milk right there. And my parents, we were talking last night, my parents are reading about, they were reading Mother Earth News and homeschooling their kids 40 years ago. And we moved from California because homeschooling became illegal there. And so my parents said, you might ban homeschooling, but we're going to do it, so we're going to see you later. So they went driving all around the country, and I got to see a lot of the country. We went from Oregon down to the Florida Keys and wound up in Arkansas from California. And so I grew up there where we chased armadillos and caught fish, and that was a good experience. But there's nothing like knowing the Lord, right? And I hope this process helps you know Him better, because if it's just something else to do, then it's a waste of time. If it's one more burden, one more thing to put on your to-do list, then it's a waste of time. Don't even do it unless it's an act of worship for you. Because everything we're due to honor Him and worship Him. So if you can make this an act of worship to get things together in a way that honors Him and pleases Him, because you love Him and your motivation is love and you're empowered by grace and the Holy Spirit, then take some steps in this direction and put a date on somewhere and say, I'm going to have things in order by this date. Or I'm going to, whatever. But choose something, but only do that if you feel like that's really God calling you, and you can do that to honor Him. Am I missing anything, Pastor Scott? Question and answer afterwards, if they want to. Okay. Okay, sure. Yes, ma'am.
What do you think of limited family partnerships? My dad set one up for his estate for us, we as children.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on that?
Sure. And to be honest with you, I don't have a lot of experience with them. So, unfortunately, I'm not a very good person to ask. Okay. But if there is one involved in an estate that you're dealing with, I'm happy to educate myself and try to give you something that makes good sense and would help you. Yes, sir.
Would you use a charitable trust as a vehicle instead of a reverse mortgage? Is there a contrast between the two?
I think reverse mortgages, generally my personal opinion about those is they're just a bad idea, personally. Well, I guess I've seen a few people who got themselves in a situation that was very difficult for them because maybe they entered into it unadvisedly, and maybe in the right situation it's a good tool. So if you favor them, I don't want to say that I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying some of the people that I saw got hurt by them, but that doesn't mean they're bad.
So what happened to them? What hurt them about them?
I guess there were several situations. Should I be repeating the questions? The question is about reverse mortgages and the contrast between a charitable trust and a reverse mortgage, and which one would be best in the right situation. I think they're each right in the right situation. And another question about what happened with the reverse mortgage situation. I think there were several of them. One of them involved some medical things that they weren't able to liquidate the house and deal with some big medical issues that they needed to deal with.
So then it would be better to liquidate a house and put the assets of that house into a charitable trust that you could draw upon and live on.
That in the right situation, that's right.
Right.
Yeah. Charitable trusts are wonderful tools, but just like any tool in the garden shed, if it's not the right tool for the job, it's the wrong tool, even though it's a great tool. So charitable trusts are smart to use in the right situation, and there's nothing better if it's the right situation. But it can be a bad thing if it's not the right situation. So there's many merits that they have, and like we saw, you can actually give your assets twice if it's the right situation, and that's a powerful thing. So, yes.
So in order to set that up, a charitable trust, specifically a homeowner, you have to sell that home off?
In order to
Take that income and live somewhere?
In order to fund the trust, the asset that you fund it with needs to be liquid in order for it to produce income for you. So yeah, if, for example, you were going to fund the trust with a house, it would need to be sold and the assets placed in the charitable trust to provide income. Yes? Sure. I don't know that there's a minimum. I think there's not an upper limit. As far as a lower limit, I'd say probably 50 or 100,000 is about where you'd want to start. I probably wouldn't think about setting one up with less. I saw another hand over here somewhere. Yes.
When the asset is in the trust, where is the asset that is producing income? Is it in stocks or bonds or money markets?
It's wherever you want it to be. You can have control over that because you're the trustee. And that's the great thing. You're retaining a lot of control over what happens with it. You do, of course, want to make sure that it's in good hands, because as we have seen recently in the market, if it's not in the right place, bad things can happen to it. So, but you can still retain a lot of control over where it is and what it's doing. You just can't, by putting it in there by definition, you can't remove principal from it.
If you put it in stocks and all of a sudden the stocks aren't doing something, you can transfer it to
Sure,
bond market.
of course. Sure. And you can have somebody managing it for you who does that for you. And there's different ways to set it up. It can get kind of complicated. I shouldn't say that. There's a number of options that you have in setting it up, which gives you a lot of control, and that's good. But you can have it in years when it doesn't do good. You can have it then in the years that it does better, make up for it, or you can have a provision where it can dip into principal to make it good for you all the time, if it needs to, if the market is low, and then in the good years that replenishes. So there's some different options, and so complicated was the wrong word. Options in there is a better way to look at it. But I'm sure there are some good qualified attorneys who can make it more clear than I've made it. But I wanted to introduce you to the idea of it, because it can complement the rest of the documents that you have. Your will or your charitable remainder trust being the centerpiece. These other documents can come around it and really complete the documents that you have.
Just so I understand, now you can set up your IRA so it's right in the charitable trust, but say you were to sell your house, could you, upon your death, could you sell your house and put it into the trust?
Sure, sure. In fact, one way, and let me repeat the question. You said, I think what you said is you can make the charitable remainder trust the beneficiary of your IRA. Not for your benefit, but maybe for the benefit of your personal beneficiaries. And then with a house, how would you place that in a charitable remainder trust? And the answer to that is you can do two things. You can either create the charitable remainder trust while you're alive and then point it to the trust so that it goes into that charitable remainder trust at your death. Or the disadvantage of doing that is you've created a trust which you may not use. You may wind up deciding you're not going to put the house in that later on for some reason. So what you can do, and it's a little cheaper to do it this way, is create it as a testamentary trust. And this gentleman back here was asking about that. You can put a provision inside your charitable remainder trust or your will that provides for the creation of a charitable remainder trust, and you can spell out the provisions inside that and point your house to the charitable remainder trust and put a paragraph that says, I want the house to fund this. And then all you've paid your attorney to do is create the provisions inside the document. You haven't actually created the document. And it's cheaper to do it that way, as I understand it. Again, you'll want to check with your attorney to make sure that this is all legal and the right way to do it, but that's my understanding of how it can be done.
You'd still be under the protection of creating the trust, though? Or you'd be under the laws at that time that are...
Good question. Yeah, you may be leaving the door open to the laws at that time. Yeah, probably would be. But it's still worth thinking about. It's still a viable option because the laws may not be bad at that time. But yes.
Earlier you talked about life insurance for your kids.
Uh-huh.
So isn't that paid on a death? So who does that help, really?
Okay.
I could see life insurance for parents.
Oh,
help
okay.
kids, but-
I'm sorry. The question is about life insurance, and I think I used the phrase "for your kids."
Oh, maybe you didn't.
No, I think I did use the phrase "for your kids," and that probably that's my fault. I guess it's for the benefit of the kids.
Okay.
It's on you for their benefit.
Okay.
So I should say that more clearly.
Okay, thanks.
Good question. Very good. Yes.
What's the most secure way to designate the guardianship of minor children? Is there an operation of law to designate guardianship of minor children?
My understanding is that it's typically done with a will, even though a will is a testate level. It's not the operation of law level. An attorney could probably give you better information. I've had some people suggest the possibility that a revocable living trust could appoint guardians, but I think that may not be right. I think it may be only that wills can do that. But if all you're using your will to do is appoint guardians for minor children, it's not handling your assets. In my opinion, a will is not the best device to use to transfer assets, but it's a great device to use to appoint guardians for minor children. The good thing is, if it's there in writing, then you've done a large step toward getting that to happen. It isn't necessarily a guarantee, because that's kind of a recommendation to the judge of what you want to have happen. But my understanding is the judge usually takes the recommendation. So, good. Well, we can talk more at lunch or after lunch if you'd like to. So let's go ahead and pray now if that sounds okay, and we can get some lunch together. Lord, we are honored that you care about us and you love us. Thank you for the privilege of being here and being able to spend some time with these great people. Lord, I pray you'd bless Duluth Bible Church and their great pastor, the different pastors that are on staff. What a blessing they are, and what a privilege, Lord, it is to be with others that you have redeemed by your blood, and you are our Father and we are your children. And while we live in a fallen world, and while it seems like things are a challenge many times, and we look at the financial situation, we look at a future that feels uncertain to us, Lord, we do want to prepare for it and be good stewards, but we know that someday we're going to be with you and not have the presence of sin anymore. But I pray we'd be good stewards until then, as your presence is always with us, and we can walk with you each step of the way. Thank you for this lunch and for the privilege of being with these fine people. In Jesus' name, amen.